Thank you for your kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Izumi from Tokyo, Japan. Since my first visit to Vietnam 19 years ago, I have been fascinated by this beautiful country. The food is also delicious. And above all, I'm very happy to meet kind and energetic friends in this country. I'd like to thank Dr. Chow, the president of the conference, and everyone involving for giving me this opportunity. Today, I'm talking about update on diagnosis and treatment guidelines for PAP. Pulmonary alveolar proteinosis, PAP, first described in 1958 by Dr. Rosen and Lebo, is a rare lung disorder characterized by an abnormal accumulation of surfactant-derived lipoprotein compounds within the alveoli of the lung, resulting in impairing gas exchange. A plain chest X-ray shows a diffuse and faint infiltrative shadow. The predominant HRCT features of PAP are smoothly thickened intralobular septal lines against a background of widespread glandular opacity, which is reported to be a crazy paving pattern, often with lobular or geographic sparing. Bile fluid from PAP proteins has a milky appearance. Pulmonary surfactant, which is composed of phospholipids and proteins, is synthesized by type 2 alveolar epithelial cells. The surfactant molecules are then secreted into the alveolar space, where they play a crucial role in reducing surface tension, which prevents alveolar collapse. Surfactant is catabolized by uptake and recycling in the alveolar macrophage. All forms of PAP are thus a result of abnormal alveolar macrophage maturation or function. The principal abnormalities in PAP result from poor surfactant clearance and altered surfactant homeostasis in the lung due to impaired alveolar macrophage function. Attenuated alveolar macrophage maturation is typically caused by inadequate GM-CSF signaling. Autoimmune PAP, APAP, occurs when anti-GM-CSF antibodies lead to deficiency of bioavailable GM-CSF. Rarely, genetic defects in the GM-CSF receptor also lead to impaired macrophage maturation in the absence of autoimmunity. It's called congenital or hereditary PAP. Finally, alveolar macrophage function might be abnormal because of several hematologic or environmental factors that cause macrophage dysfunction, secondary PAP. Yes. Sorry. Professor Nakata's discovery of anti-GM-CSF autoantibody was a breakthrough in understanding the pathophysiology mechanisms of APAP and developing treatments for the condition. He is a friendly old man who loves fishing and ramen noodles. He's a kind and a nice guy with a great sense of humor, but he is also one of the bravest fighters in academia. To obtain human alveolar macrophage for his research, he made his colleagues to insert a bronchoscope into his own lungs many times. Professor Nakata is currently working to encourage the widespread use of GM-CSF inhalation therapy, which is currently covered by insurance in Japan. He looks so stylish and cool in his suit, doesn't he? Nakata and colleagues first identified GM-CSF neutralizing antibodies in the serum and bowel fluid of patients with APAP. These neutralizing antibodies were not isolated in patients with congenital or secondary PAP. This is the Japanese PAP guideline published in 2022, which shows the PAP diagnosis algorithms. If PAP is suspected based on symptoms, chest X-ray, and serum biomarkers, a bronchoscopy will be performed if there are characteristic HRCT findings in order to confirm the diagnosis. Next, the presence of GM-CSF antibody is investigated. If antibodies are detected, a diagnosis of APAP is made. If GM-CSF antibody are not present, secondary PAP is diagnosed if an underlying disease is present. These are the clinical questions and recommendations that are addressed in the European PAP guideline published in 2024. The clinical questions and recommendations regarding the diagnosis of PAP are shown below. Yes, they recommend a bowel to be performed, and they suggest not routinely performs lung biopsy, and they recommend GM-CSF antibody testing. This is an algorithm for the differential diagnosis of PAP. If the presence of PAP is suspected, GM-CSF antibody, serum GM-CSF autoantibody testing should be performed first. A positive test confirms the diagnosis of autoimmune APAP. The diagnostic algorithm in these guidelines assumes that PAP has already been diagnosed before testing for GM-CSF antibodies. First, PAP is suspected based on imaging findings and then diagnosed, after which testing for the anti-GM-CSF antibody is performed next. However, is it easy to diagnose PAP based on HRCT findings? Yes. Haven't you ever had a patient with APAP who was misdiagnosed with chronic IP and had been treated with corticosteroids? It is difficult to differentiate APAP from with HRCT alone. Here's a quick quiz. Which of these images do you think is an HRCT scan of APAP? Respiratory, this is RS viral pneumonia, influenza B, PCP, and COVID-19. It is difficult to differentiate. Since it is difficult to diagnose PAP based solely on imaging and clinical findings, the measurement of anti-GM-CSF antibodies may be implemented earlier in the diagnostic algorithm. This table shows cohorts of PAP patients in each country. As you can see, more than 19% of patients in every cohort are APAP patients. So it will be more practical to use anti-GM-CSF antibody testing in order to detect PAP among ILD patients rather than to differentiate each type of PAP. For this, there is a need for the development of a test kit that can easily detect the presence of anti-GM-CSF antibody. This is a measurement kit which uses an immunochromatographic method to detect the presence of anti-GM-CSF antibodies in serum. First, drop 5 microliter of serum into the area labeled S. Next, place the provided development solution onto the spot marked D. If the red line becomes visible on the area labeled T onto the spot, the sample positive for anti-GM-CSF autoantibodies. Measurements can be made in 15 minutes. The measurement of anti-GM-CSF here and here should be implemented earlier in the diagnostic algorithm, shouldn't it? Here's treatments for PEP. We investigated the efficacy and safety of GM-CSF inhalation therapy. We conducted a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial of daily inhaled GM-CSF or placebo in 64 patients with APAP. This phase 3 trial is called the PAGE trial. Professor Nakata and Dr. Inoue, the author of the International Guidelines for IPF and fibrotic HP, are also present. In addition, I am also present here. The change in the mean AADO2 was significantly better in the GM-CSF group. Mean change from baseline were minus 4.5 millimeter in GM-CSF group, and p-value was 0.02. The change in the density of the lung field on CT was also better in the GM-CSF group between baseline and week 25. A systemic review and meta-analysis to evaluate the efficacy and safety of nebulized GM-CSF in APAP was conducted. 6 studies were identified for review and outcomes assessed. Our SGRQ-QOL score, 6-minute walk test, gas exchange with DLCO % predicted, and AADO2. By the way, GM-CSF inhalation therapy is listed as an important treatment option in both guidelines with how to distinguish. Yes, okay. By the way, are you familiar with the APAP severity classification? It's called the Disease Severity Score, DSS, and was first proposed by Dr. Inoue in 2008. Despite being the author of the international guidelines, he is a cute man, and the DSS is now used worldwide. The DSS is based on the presence of symptoms and degree of reduction in PaO2. The categories include DSS-1 with no symptom and PaO2 low greater than 70 millimeter, DSS-2 with symptomatic and PaO2 of greater than 70 millimeter, DSS-5 with PaO2 less than 50 millimeter. Pulmonary gas transfer, DLCO and AADO2 correlated well with DSS. Japanese guideline for APAP uses DSS to determine the treatments. Specific APAP treatments such as whole lung lavage, WLL, and GM-CSF inhalation therapy are intended primarily for patients with DSS-4 or higher. On the other hand, even patients with DSS-3 with hypoxia with below 70 are recommended to be treated symptomatically. Additionally, as of 2022, GM-CSF inhalation therapy was still considered experimental. The Japanese Respiratory Society is currently updating its APAP guidelines. GM-CSF inhalation therapy will no longer be an experimental treatment and will be available for some DSS2 patients. This is a 2024 ERS guidelines for the treatment of APAP, which list WLL and inhaled GM-CSF as treatment options. Inhaled GM-CSF is recommended for symptomatic patients. And WLL, whole lung lavage, is intended for APAP patients with evidence of gas exchange impairment, as well as either symptoms of or functional impairment. WLL, whole lung lavage, appears to be intended for patients who are more severely ill. In our PAGE study, we demonstrated a statistically significant improvement in AADO2 with inhaled GM-CSF. However, a reduction of only 4.5 millimeter in AADO2 may be not very clinically significant. Furthermore, the PAGE trial was limited to DSS2 to DSS4 subjects for inclusion and excluded DSS5 severe patients. However, excluding DSS5 patients could underestimate the efficacy of GM-CSF inhalation therapy. So we conduct PAGE 2 trial. A clinical trial was conducted to provide relief of severely ill patients until regulatory approval was granted. Priority was given to the most severely ill patients, open study of the actual drug only. The effect of increasing the daily inhalation of GM-CSF from 250 microgram to 500 microgram was studied in patients who had an insufficient response to biweekly inhalation of GM-CSF for 24 weeks. So this trial examining the effects of longer-term treatment in the real world. This is a study protocol of PAGE 2. Patients with moderate to severe APAP were recruited. Subjects were treated for 24 weeks with a regimen of 250 microgram of GM-CSF inhaled once daily. If the change from baseline was ADO2 was measured, and if the change from baseline was less than 10 millimeter, which means improved oxygenation, the patient will fold up. If it was over minus 10 millimeter, treatment was performed by inhaling double dose of 500 microgram once daily until week 36. If the change in AADO2 was less than minus 10 millimeter from baseline at week 36, patients will fold up. And if it was over minus 10 millimeter, it is not effective. A regimen of 500 microgram once daily was continued until week 48. As shown in table on the right, it's very small. 21 out of the 34 patients who participated in the PAGE 2 trial, 61.8% had severe DSS5. This is the study flow. After eligibility testing, 34 patients were found eligible and enrolled in the study. Treatment was started with a regimen of 250 microgram GM-CSF inhalation. When AADO2 was measured at week 24, 18 patients improved more than 10 millimeter from baseline and were followed up until 48 weeks thereafter. Of the 14 patients whose improvement was less than 10 millimeter, 13 patients began inhaled of 500 microgram. ADO2 was measured at week 36, and 4 patients with an improvement were followed up until 48 weeks. The remaining 9 patients continued to inhale 500 microgram until week 48. This is a waterfall plot showing the change in ADO2 from baseline at 24 and 48 weeks. Almost all patients experienced a decrease in ADO2, suggesting that long-term GM-CSF therapy effectively treats moderate to severe APAP. Furthermore, the improvement is clearly greater than that observed in the PAGE trial, in which the ADO2 drop was only 4.5. These 5 patients were successfully weaned from long-term oxygen therapy. This figure illustrates the change in ADO2 using a spaghetti plot. Cases that entered remission at 24 weeks of treatment are shown in red. Those that entered remission at 36 weeks are shown in green, and those that did not enter remission after 48 weeks of treatment are shown in blue. Most cases that entered remission at 24 weeks, it is red line, rebounds, causing ADO2 to rise again after the observation period began. This suggests that this therapy requires maintenance. On the other hand, the blue group of patients who never entered remission during the 48-week period had ADO2 levels of 30 to 40. This suggests that patients with poor treatment responses were not severely ill. This table shows improvement in AADO2 from baseline at 24 weeks by DSS. Overall, there was an improvement of 12.8 millimeter. The improvement was 11.8 millimeter for DSS-3 and 13.5 millimeter for DSS-5. The greater the severity of the disease, the greater the improvement appears to be. It was more effective for those who are more severely ill. This is the year's APAP treatment guideline. Oh, it's okay. I mentioned earlier, which lists WLL, whole lung lavage, and GM-CSF inhalation therapy as treatment options in the same line. Whole lung lavage, WLL, is the current standard of care treatment for patients affected by PAP. WLL is usually performed under general anesthesia with lung separation, obtained by a double lumen endobronchial tube. While mechanical ventilation is maintained in one lung, the other lung is repeatedly filled with saline and then drained by gravity. Typically, the lavage is accompanied by chest percussion to remove the surfactant effectively, and is continued until the lavaged food becomes clear, usually judged by visual inspection. Therapeutic efficacy of WLL derives from removal of the accumulated lipoproteinous material by physically washing the alveoli with saline. Those patients who underwent lavage had superior survival with a 5-year survival rate from diagnosis of 24% compared with 85% for those not receiving such treatment. But first WLL, 84% of the cases showed significant clinical physiologic and radiologic improvement. So I have no time that with the spread of GM-CSF therapy, combination therapy is becoming a treatment option for severely ill or refractory patients. After the WLL, we add GM-CSF inhalation. It is very effective. The figure on the left showed changes in the level of ADO2 during the GM-CSF inhalation therapy before and after WLL. In all of the 5 cases evaluated, GM-CSF inhalation before WLL did not improve the levels of ADO2. Therefore, GM-CSF inhalation after WLL was performed. Interestingly, the therapy decreased the levels of ADO2 significantly and improves the radiological findings. GM-CSF inhalation after WLL could be better than inhalation before WLL. As seen on the right, recently it was shown that adding inhaled GM-CSF after WLL can prevent the need for additional rescue WLL therapy. So we conduct a trial, WLL versus WLL plus GM-CSF inhalation, but I have no time, so I exclude this part. I'm sorry. Yeah. The results of the phase 2 trial indicate that GM-CSF inhalation therapy is more effective for patients with more severe illness. In severe cases, the removal of alveolar surfactant, lipids, and proteins with WL first can improve the delivery of inhaled GM-CSF to the alveoli, leading to enhanced outcomes. The combination therapy has been shown to be more effective than WLL alone, according to previous reports and current analysis. Either treatment may be the first choice. WLL and GM-CSF inhalation may be the first choice in severe cases. In general, minimally invasive GM-CSF inhalation therapy is preferred. Combination therapy should be selected if it is necessary to improve respiratory conditions quickly and reliably. In recent years, series of guidelines for the diagnosis and treatment of PEP have been published. Detecting anti-GM-CSF antibodies is important not only for the diagnosis of APEP, but also for the differential diagnosis of ILDs. Maintenance therapy is necessary for GM-CSF inhalation therapy, even in effective cases. Even if the initial effect is insufficient, improvement can be expected through continued inhalation. Combination therapy, whole lung lavage plus GM-CSF inhalation, is also an important treatment strategy. Thank you for your attention.